Now, here I am for my AMA. Obviously, I always say I want to catch up on these. This one is going to be a quicker one. I'm going to get it out quickly, and we're going to go straight to go in the description box below, submit your next questions, and let's catch up on a few. So Joshua Gardner says, more of a personal question than a CSGO question. Dating back to the days of Gottfrag, you have always made references to sports and pro wrestling, along with your brother Richard Lewis as well. How/what got you into American sports as a kid with the time difference and lack of technology streaming? And additionally, are you a fan of the rope opera? Are you still a fan? You are the last true person to speak on the 1.6 era, my era, and that's why I support and appreciate you. Thanks much. Well, when I was a boy, wrestling was just very unique compared to, I mean, we didn't really have that type of thing in Britain. That'd been like a couple of decades ago that was popular. Also, it was kind of a flex for people who had the early satellite Sky television because you could get WWF and all that crap on it and you could get the pay-per-views. But also, when I was actually, I mean, this had been in my teens, I remember that on free satellite, if you didn't pay for the big channels but you still had the satellite dish, you could get a bunch of channels. One of them was TNT. I think it was TNT, or Turner Classic Movies or something. And it would actually show the replay of the WCW Nitro, or whatever it was, whatever the Friday or Saturday show was, like essentially their equivalent of SmackDown. It would show that, and so back at the time, there wasn't many, I only had 4 channels anyway, aside from the satellite, so it was just something fun to watch. Obviously, I enjoyed comics, etc., so I could suspend disbelief and just get into the storylines. That was also a classic era. We're talking about the era where they had the whole NWO, and they were battling with the ratings war against the fucking, maybe it's Monday show, I don't know what these bloody shows are. Then there's the whole thing in terms of other sports, like for the NBA, look, Michael Jordan was a worldwide phenomenon, even though it was only sort of magazine omnibus shows wrapping up. I used to love watching the highlights, and then through watching Michael Jordan's Bulls, I found Dennis Rodman, instantly fell in love with his game, because at the time, I was a kid who hadn't played much basketball, so when I would play at school, or I would play with friends, they're doing all the best shooting, they know how to dribble around people, do a bunch of moves. I would just try and be Dennis Rodman. I would try and just hustle, get rebounds, hustle, guard people, play up in people. And I found it's mega effective. By the way, pro tip, if you're not good at any sport, just put in loads of effort on defense. One, you will make it really annoying for the best players on the other team, which will make your team love you. And B, just annoying them, even if you're not that good, will actually make them make mistakes and get frustrated. They might even start trying to fight you and come out the game completely. So that's a good angle. Then in the 2000s, when we're online, you had, there were just torrent sites back then that had loads of classic games. I've seen so many Celtics games from the 80s, you don't even know. I've seen so many games of like classic Bulls games from the 90s. Sadly, these sites don't exist anymore. This is sort of almost an oasis in there was a pre-internet period, just fuck all content, and then the post period where it all became sites and all the copyright strikes came in. So I would say I remember getting back into basketball, watching it heavily in 2006 when the Heat Mavs final happened. I was actually staying at a time with a legendary Counter-Strike player from Canada called Steel, not the one you think of, the one that was Bulgarian and then it emigrated to Canada. And I just remember watching that series, made me love the game again. Sadly, the rules are being fucked a bit already. I remember even telling his friend was like, saying, "Oh, actually, the Mavs are the better team, and they're going to win." I told him, like, "No, the Heat's going to win this." Like, if you look at the way they can't defend Wade, if you look at the way essentially, like, I mean, let's be real, Nowitzki wasn't playing like the MVP type player he was. I thought it was obvious to me. Even so, was bullshit the way they ref that finals. Should probably have been a Game 7. Shout out people like Alonzo Mourning for being a beast, though, at a lower role. For hockey, similar time period. I was in Montreal for fuck's sake, so I got into hockey anyway. I was always interested in Gretzky and Lemieux, and once I found Mario Lemieux's cure and went really deep on it, what a mega sport. And then also because I liked the Pittsburgh Penguins as a result of that, then they had their sort of second in era, their renaissance in the 2000s, second half of the 2000s. And then for the NFL, I just got interested in the player Peyton Manning, looked into his whole career story, started to watch what he was doing, and that was sort of my window into the game. And then I started to get interested in players like Ray Lewis and other great players. Barbara Stanwick's legs. Do you enjoy the music of Manowar? I've never even heard of this music before in my life. You can already tell it's some like generic metal. So I looked up a couple of songs. I looked up one of their best songs, listened to the first two. First one sounded like the fucking Nightman song from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So I don't know what to tell you there, boys. Like, it almost sounded like a parody of fucking 80s metal. So I would say in general, no, not a fan. It sounded super generic. I don't really get it. In general, by the way, I know it's going to hurt people's feelings. Who gives a fuck? If you listen to metal and you're already know the devil and Satan, does it really hurt your feelings when the video game man says he doesn't like it as well? Grow the fuck up. Like, I think in general, metal's a mega overrated genre. I think loads of it is just wankery about all silly imagery. And I think, quite frankly, if you look at it, everyone's going to go, no, it helps me with like depression. And that's like, mate, half that shit's more depressing than anything. Like, I don't give a fuck what y'all think. Some of it's good, if the musicianship's good, if the writing's good, but a lot of it, like, I don't care to listen to people screaming. I'm not really a big fan. Mr. Vault 16, inspired by your and Monty's criticism of the LOL League and tournament format, I had an idea about a theoretical format and would like to hear your thoughts on it. By the way, this is fucking enormous, so I'll go quickly through it. Spring split and playoffs remain the same, but playoff results are qualifiers into international leagues. These leagues take place during summer instead of summer split. It's fine. Top N playoffs, depending on region, playoff teams qualify for what Monty would call International Super League with playoffs at the end. Fine by me. Next, M teams, depending on region, as well as wildcard region top teams qualify for a second International Super League with playoffs. So fine so far. The rest of the teams play a tournament with the regional/academy teams, basically EU Masters with bottom LEC teams in it, one of my ideas. Which is a pretty good one. Top teams from the first league automatically qualify for Worlds. Playoff results determine whether they are Tier 1, Tier 2, music for the seeding, etc. Pretty good, by the way. At least they'd have played to get that seeding. Bottom teams are for the first league join the second league for playoffs. The top teams in which also qualify for Worlds, but in Tier 2 and Tier 3. Yeah, good angle. Multiple ways to get to Worlds. No play-ins. No max one team of each region, etc. I mean, I think it's pretty good generally. Like, I don't want to write in a massive response or go super. I think it's a pretty good one in general. I think it addressed a lot of the problems there. It's a lot better than Riot's current system, isn't it? Who wouldn't want to watch that? I think it'd be very interesting. And by the way, how interesting would the Super League be? You could even, like I would think, just make the Super League NA and EU teams, make the other Super League, China and Korea, maybe allow like LMS, PCS to go into theirs, or like one wild, like Latin America or something, or Brazil can go into the fucking NA EU one if they do well enough. Maybe even the winner of EU Masters goes into something mental. Breen Burrito, the big one, says, how does Snax rank among the greatest players of all time? Did Virtus.pro's dips in form and eventual fall off significantly cost him chances to shine individually, since it seems he wasn't on the level of simple Nico Ziwu, who dominated even on weak teams? Right, he is an all-time great player, probably is the best Polish CSGO player ever. But the problem is, I always thought he was a little bit overrated, because here's the problem. He was never a stats monster, really. He would have certain matches he was, but he wasn't like those players you named. He wasn't the guy who was just hard carried anyway. He was more like a player where he had very good fragging, and, I mean, people know he was kind of like a little bit of the more, I mean, how would people describe him in this sense? He's sort of the more aggressive lurk, so not quite like Flusher, but sort of comparable in terms of how important he is to a team and what he's going to do for you and how hard it is to sort of keep control of him. I would say it wasn't to do with the fall-offs. They had plenty of years that they were a very good team, and he was on a team that never had to change players, so he got to know his teammates very well. I would say he's pretty good, very good player. I think realistically he had we're talking about 3.5 years of longevity as a star player. Never was a monster carry. Certainly was an excellent player within that unit though. So yeah, I think he was an all-time great player. I don't think he's going to be like, I think at this point with how many players have been, he'd be top 20 probably. I don't know if he makes top 10. He'd maybe just come in on top 10. A lot of that's going to be off like impact in the eye test, not just stats and championships though. Ask Blaster 2000. Who do you think is the best MMA commentator? How do UFC commentators compare to the top esports casters? Lastly, there's like 3 questions here, bro. Just for fun, build a 3-man. I'm not doing that. Right, so we'll go with for play-by-play. I'm generally not a big play-by-play fan. My favourite would be Mauro Ranello. I think it's all-time classic. Did Pride, did fucking Strike Force, does the less competition. Just has a brilliant voice, great enthusiasm, nailed so many classic moments. As an analyst, I prefer the analysts in general. I'm not a person who just sucks people off because they're great fighters, so I'm not going to put in some of the people you think. Joe Rogan, I think, is just the classic, right? I think he brings just enough for the pleb to understand. He has a decent amount for the expert. I mean, everyone's going to go, no, he knows more, but he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, for fuck's sake, and he was a state champion as a fucking striker. Shut the fuck up, half of you guys. I think actually the two best ex-pros I've heard is Dominic Cruz. I think is very, very good. I know he made that silly comment about Conor McGregor versus Khabib, but I know what he meant by that. I think he's a fantastic analyst. No surprise, look at the way he fights. He's like sort of the Rafa of fucking MMA. And then I would also go with my classic Mauro's old partner, Bas Rutten. He's just funny. He knows what he's talking about, and he sort of also gets how you have to try and win as the underdog. He doesn't just cast a silly game. In terms of like how comparing to esports casters, I mean, I think the absolute best esports casters are better than almost any sports casters. The problem is this, who I call the best esports casters, you guys don't seem to. So you're all going to tell me that a bunch of fucking people who came in the last few years are as good. And I think they're number one because everyone, it's like half of having an opinion in esports now is yours just has to be different. It's all hipsterism at this point in time. I don't get it. But I think like Henry G and Sadikis were fucking unbelievable, better than almost any sportscasters, quite frankly, in terms of a duo. Greldin94, what is your favourite champion to watch for each position in league in the right hands? Ooh. Right, the tough thing is when I go roll by roll, here's a couple that I actually kind of struggle because I guess it's not really, it's more the player I care about than the champion. So, okay, for top lane, I'm just trying to think consistently. I'd probably say Nah. I feel like you can just do so much in so many lanes. You can roam and do the skirmishes. You can obviously potentially be the best player in a team fight if you use the ult correctly. It's godlike. I think it's some of the ones Flame did. I think Nah's a pretty classic one. Doesn't really have a bad level on that. Jungle, I'll be boring to say the obvious answer. It's Lee Sin, right? The best Lee Sin players are fucking unbelievable. Even when Shadow was on Mad Lions, he was doing some crazy shit in LEC. Who doesn't like to watch that? I'd say just go watch some LPL Lee Sins if you want to see some beasts. Mid lane, at this point in time, I think it's probably Silas, because the point is, it's not only a monster carry champ, but you get to show off your skills on the other guy's fucking champion, potentially in terms of using the ult. So I've always thought it's a way to show off extra skill and how deep your champion pool is. For ADC, I struggle nowadays because ADC as a role has gotten so shit. So I actually might say Aphelios. I don't really understand myself what's going on all the time. But I get the feeling when the really great players play Aphelios, there's just so much more they can do to counter those OP fucking side lane champions. For support, even though I love to play Pyke, I actually don't find watching it as good beyond the absolute best. So I'd actually probably have to say, maybe say Rakan. I think there's a lot of like nuance to what you do with Rakan, but I do enjoy watching that pretty much most of the time. Top players play it. Cynicism. If CSGO had a prize fight event like an MMA, format will be best of 5, key detail, with the matchup cards, what teams in their primes would you pick for the 5 matches at the event? And who would be the 2 teams headlining the event? Right, so this is easy. Let me think. Who's my top billing? So I'm going to go, because I'm going to try and, I'm Dana White. I want to create the best possible matchup. So my headliner is going to be 2015 TSM, the Astralis, Korn, Carrigan and Cajun B, and Virtus Pro, the classic lineup, because these are teams that always played great matches, great finals, always very, very close. It can go all 5 maps. They had very deep map pools. They're such contrasting styles. One sort of a bit of a choker in a tight game, but a great front runner. The other one, it's always a messy game. They're the hardest team to beat. They're the team that tends to win in the clutch. I think that'd just be an amazing set of games there with some classic players. And obviously later on they played a major final with slightly different lineups. Then for the core main event, I'm just going to pick one based on it being a banger, a very exciting match. I'm going to take Evil Geniuses against Astralis from 2019. And the reason why, there's massive upset potential. EG was winning most of those games, but the map pool evens it out a little bit for Astralis. It means we're not just playing the strong maps for EG as well, and we'll really see what happens on some of those side maps for EG. I think that'll be a fucking fire matchup. That's the team that always could against Astralis, even though their rivals Team Liquid, who are better than them, couldn't for some reason. Navi against Luminosity in 2016. I think it was always a great matchup. Obviously, it was a key hurdle for the Brazilians to match and then finally overcome. Guardian against Fallen. You have Zeus against Fallen himself. You have fucking Coldzera in the game. You have Classic Fur. This is when Flamey was still good, man. Seized and Edward are still legit players. Like these were some great teams. Both of them, by the way, amazing at running that T-side clock down. Both very good on certain maps like Overpass, like Train, Mirage. They have the same map pool basically, boys. It would be a fantastic match. Again, because we're going BO5, I want teams that play a lot of maps, so I'm going to have to say 2015 TSM versus Fnatic. TSM won most of those series, not only a couple of them were BO5s though, and these teams can play all the maps. So this would be really interesting. I would love to see these teams play a BO5. I mean, they did, but I'd love to see another one. And I think these are classic matchups. Dane against Swede. All the best players, all off Meister versus Device. And then finally, I'll take a modern one. I'll actually take, from the LAN period onwards from last year, I'll take the Na'Vi lineup that won the major against Heroic with Cadian and Shush and Tessus and all those guys. Because they both had a very wide map pool. It was always close games. Heroic's style was so contrasting. They were so close to winning many times with finesse. The Na'Vi guys could power through games. I just think it's a great matchup. I think it would round up this card very well. We've got a banging event on our hands. Django Tango. During the play-ins for international events in LOL, OCE, Oceanic Region, is routinely ranked as the bottom wildcard region by all of the analysts, coaches and content creators, but for the last 2 years of international play, the region has been one of the top performing wildcards, consistently beating down other wildcard regions. Do you agree that region is being overlooked? No. I mean, for a start off, everyone's scouting the fuck out of it to try and get those players and bring them to NA, so I don't think so. I think those Rover performances, I don't really give a flying fuck that they got the odd BO1 win. They even speak bloody English and should be able to just follow all the Western leagues, right? I know that might hurt your feelings, but why do I fucking care? Tea Time says, you've talked about how you had to learn how to be charismatic and whatnot on air as talent, and how you did a lot of study of people's vocal patterns, body languages, etc. to get there. Could you talk about that a little bit in detail? Like, how does someone go from being one of the top talents, whatever, you get the point. How does someone go from being who I was to who I am now, right? I've gone over this many, many, many times, right? Here's some simple ones. I studied pickup artists because I wanted to learn how do you approach people, especially in a scenario like an interview person, if a player about to be interviewed or a woman about to be approached, where they have a sense that you want something from them. How do you strike up the conversation, make the introduction, start a little bit of small talk, detect where they're at, but be clear with your intentions and not pussyfoot around. I think it's a great way to learn. Those are all skills that they will teach you. Stand-up comedy was one, so I could learn comedy timing. I think Ricky Gervais probably has the best comedic timing of any stand-up guy I've ever seen. It's fucking unbelievable. That's basically what he does on all his shows if you've never seen it. Put in an enormous amount of reps. There is no excuse for having failed to try. You might not be good at it, but put in the fucking reps. How do you know if you're good at it? You haven't even tried enough. I would say practice getting into the pocket, in the sense that when there's an awkward silence, when you don't know what to say, when the other person said something weird, don't fucking flee from it. Don't freeze up. Practice sort of figuring out, I could say this, or go with this angle, or how to reset and then go to a new point. There's something you do. And I would say, if it's a topics I knew about, I just did an absurd amount of research. And then I just trust that if it's something important, it's stuck in there, I'll remember it, and I can trust that I'll be able to talk about it. I don't have to worry about what my point was or what I might say next. Something's going to come out, and I trust that it'll be brilliant. Michael Walgast, who are the 5, or more if you would like, best/most impactful non-AWPers in CSGO right now? As in, like Nico counts as a non-AWP, he says, right? So I'm going to do right this moment, and I'm going to go possibly in this order. I'm going to go more best rather than impactful, because impactful, I think, is just way too much sort of subjectivity in that one, and I'd have to watch more games to really pick out my best 5, I think. But in terms of best, I'm going to go number 1, Spinks. I think he has been absolutely insane. He just has to get used to big stage matches. Aside from that, his skills in the server, they're extremely good. There are very few players that are better than this guy right now. Blame F, I've got to go with, the guy just does his job every single fucking game, seemingly. It doesn't matter how Astralis plays, doesn't matter what opponent they're playing, doesn't matter how the game goes for him, he just gets his numbers and he does his job. And man, what would Astralis be if he wasn't doing his job? Terrible is the answer. Stown from Heroic, a really consistent, fabulous all-around game. Still has a little bit to go in the big matches, but generally he's just a very good player. He even had an alright game against Na'Vi most of the time. So actually, yeah, I think he's proving to become... He's on the border to being a superstar player if he can keep going with the numbers, or he can sort of get a bit more killer instinct. Nico will be on the list despite the odd downturn at some of the big events. He's still a phenomenal player. He's had some excellent series this year. He's also one of the best and most impactful players. And then I think for my 5th one, there's so many choices I could go with here. Obviously, I could have gone with someone from FaZe, but I think actually I'm going to go with KSCERATO from Furia. I think his aim is some of the best in Counter-Strike. I think when he is on his game, he is the most important player on Furia. I think Fury's maybe a bit more consistent historically. I think he's just the best Brazilian player. I think people really underrate how good he is, actually. Captain Confused. You will be part of a show match in CSGO and you get to choose your teammates and your enemies, retired players, talent, etc. included, if you want to play with / against them. Whom do you choose? Like, I would make it, first of all, since I'm playing, it has to be a scenario which I can't just have, like I could have put the people I mentored, I could have put, like, the people like Device or Get Right or something. I could have put him in a monster team, but I don't want him to win the show match for me or carry me. I want it to be people where I have to do an excellent job to have any chance in the show match. So I'll take a bunch of talent and people I know and friends of mine. So I would take me, obviously the AWPer. I'll take Yanko as my IGL. I think he'd just do a solid job in the modern day. He plays a nice sort of aggressive style, likes force spying. I think I'll take Tommy Lopez, because if people don't know, him and another person I pick here are way better than anyone else who ever played, did analysis and was a former pro. He used to be a world-class IGL and was a solid fragger as well. I'll take Moses, because he was a very good player back in the day. He's just a great teammate, a great guy to have around, fun personality. And lastly, I'll take another Finn. I'll take Natu, my old, by the way, what a phenomenal career he had for someone who later did analysis and is now a team owner. So he's a great guy to round out the team, can play many different roles. So we're a really nice little lineup here, I think. Obviously, I'm the AWPer. And I would pick an opposing team. I want it to be people I've sort of tortured or criticised. So I have a chance to kill them and knife them and no-scope them. But they have a chance to kill me. And hopefully would want to kill some of the people on my team. So as a result, they can sort of get a bit of revenge, can't they? So spoiler, we're going with an unorthodox team here because we're going with a dual AWP setup. So we're going to go with Smith, not as an AWPer. He's my support player and king of flashing. Smiths, of course, who I've criticised for many years, I would say 2016 onwards. Exist, because I used to criticise his vetoes and thought he wasn't as great in IGL. Might have been wrong on that one. Fallen, because I do think he's the most overrated player in CSGO history, so I definitely want a chance to go against this fucker. Jim, just because I think I'm one of the only people who might know how to play against annoying AWPers like that. Seems like most pros don't. And I've got to go with Nico. Look, he'd bash my head in the game. But I'll tell you what, I'd love to get a chance to fucking knife this cunt. I'd love to be the one who cut Nico, eh? See how it feels? Oh, and also, by the way, since I know he checks every angle, I'd do some really, you should see what I would do. I would be like the 5-7CZ fucker who just like drops down out of a vent when he's checking the other corners. But I'd do some crazy shit to Nico. It'd all be about tilting him. I'd want to tilt him and then I would just type over and over again and will say, Nico's tilted, tap, 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 tap. I would just type that in the world say all the time. Fuck him. Jaho says, what is your favourite video game soundtrack ever? I mean, I'm not someone who has played loads of video games in the last 20 years, so I've got to say the cheat answer is probably StarCraft Brood War. I mean, the music's so good on that, they even had it in pro games, and you loved it. The real answer, I mean, I can cheat as well. I've got to say it's Frontier Elite 2, one of my favourite games. It's got loads of classical music, like in the Hall of the Mountain King. Makes going through the warp, etc., 10 times more entertaining. So yeah, it's mega music, right? Another one by Jaho. What is your favourite aspect of being an on-air talent? Getting to tell the story the way I want it told. Being able to say things other people won't say but I think are true. Being able to call out people who haven't performed well enough in really big games when otherwise it might be tempting to only praise the best players. Being able to tell you how important something is when maybe it's lost otherwise on people. Being able to be the guy who gets the epic line off or celebrates the key moment in someone's career instead of letting it pass by and the other journalists having to cover it. I think they're some of the things I enjoy. Daniel Hambrace. Some players have ill-fitting names. If you could rename some players to something more fitting, what would you rename them to? I won't answer this question because I don't even get the question. Ill-fitting names. Forrest is a shit name. Neo's a pleb name from The Matrix. Who else? Fucking Simple's not exactly a great... None of these are good names. You just think they're good because the player's amazing. So, aside from just renaming something like Smith's the fucking coat hanger... No, not coat hanger. Like, hanger-on or coattail rider. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't think... That's not a very good question, mate. I get the premise, but it's not good. You come up with some fucking ones to tell me. Crazy Leprechaun. What was the funniest fan and player interaction you've seen happen at an event? Right, since he seems to go out of his way to try and expose things about me, including filming me secretly and saying stupid shit on Twitter, I'll tell you a funny story. So back in the day when Na'Vi was the #1 team in the world and they won a bunch of majors, I went to Ukraine. I was at the Cyber Arena, that location where the home base of that team, and Zeus was there. And a little kid, I'm going to guess he was 8 or 9, came up and he said to Zeus in Russian, like, can I have a picture, please. And Zeus turns to me and he goes, can you take a picture? And hands me like the kid's phone, right? I get the phone, and the problem is the Cyberine, always famous because it's a LAN centre, has like bad lighting, weird lights coming. So I take a picture, but it's one of those ones where like people are moving. I probably didn't hold it perfectly, and it's a little bit blurred. You can't really see the faces that much. So I go, oh wait, this done. And I go to say it's fucking blurred, or it didn't work. And Zeus just goes like this. He just puts his hand up and he goes, it's okay. It's okay though. And then he just takes it, hands it back to the kid. Kid doesn't look at it. The kid just walks off. And I just thought, what a cunt. This is talking about 1 second more, so that kid actually has a real photo. Instead, Zeus was just fine that this kid went away. He's going to go home and show his parents and his friends, look at this picture of me. And they're going to go, there's no one in that. You're full of shit. You are. I thought, what a twat. And this is in 2011, by the way, or 2010. This isn't when we're super duper famous. You have 1 million people lined up around the corner. Man alive. That really told me, that set the stage for who this guy is, by the way. And here's the other thing, by the way. If you haven't noticed in my career, don't worry, he is sort of treated like a fucking mafia don within that scene. I ain't afraid of you, motherfucker. I've never been afraid of people like that. As soon as I see someone who's a bully, I tell you what, I'm not the guy who goes, oh, better say, I go right in your motherfucking face. Let's see if you like to bully. Go on, I'll bully the bullies, mate. That's how I run this shit. And don't worry, fuckers like that know it. That's why when they meet me, they ask me for a photo and go, eh. They don't do any of the big boy shit they're all flexing on the internet. John Livingston. Hello, Thorin. Thank you for the information you share. I truly enjoy the value you continue to create. If I may, I'd like to ask you a question. You're already asking me a question, mate. I'm already reading this shit. I am curious about FPS strategy. From your experience, whom are the most impressive trio or unit in any team shooter from esports history, Quake included? If I may, I would like the standard to be how the three function as a unit within a whole to command control of... When they say that, right, what they really mean is that, even though I'm just asking a question, can you just write essentially like a 4,000 word article, but just say it in this video? Again, maybe in the future I'll let people vote on this. I'll probably do that soon. And they might pick this and maybe I'll do a 30-minute video on it. I'm going to give you a quick version. I'm definitely not going to go mad in depth like that. So I think here are some great cores from different games. I think in CSGO, it would probably be Device, Dupree and Glaive. I always thought those were the three and their specialist skills fitting together, but then also being able to play a part that made the game so brilliant for the Astralis guys, hence why they've been so much worse since Device left. I thought actually for the Brazilians, it's overrated that it was Fallen. As far as I can tell, it was more like the Taco and Coldzera combo and then the aggression of Fur. That trio together seems to be the winning formula and when they were at their best. You go look at Fur, Fallen, Coldzera, they even played before Taco and they weren't anything special. They played afterwards and they weren't anything special. Then how about this one? In CS 1.6, I'll take Zonic, Ave and Sunder. Obviously, they were the connecting factor of two great lineups for MTW, because I thought, again, you've got the AWPer that worked with the tactical elements, which are the other two. Then you've got the other two who could work as entries or supportive elements. Like, these guys were just fucking amazing at knowing what to do in the map, when, how to play off each other, how to play out 2v2s and 3v3s. I think there was a great set of people. From Quake, I've got a couple of TDM names for you. I'll take the Ice Climbers core, which is of course Toxic, his brother Gopher and Fox. I think those were probably the real three that did it. Yes, people like Panic Hall were amazing, Reptile was good, but these were the three that sort of set the table for the team. And then I've got to take obviously the Germans of Ancient and SK. I'm going to take, here's the tough one. Part of me's tempted to put my boy ZYZ in because he was sort of a team player, but let's be real, you've got to have the firepower too. Stellam, Neok and Slinger, three of the best German Quake players ever to play, and when you put those three on the same team, they are an extremely good team, and the way they controlled Quake 3, as opposed to the CES constant aggression style of Ice Climbers, I thought was a brilliant contrast and showed actually almost a Counter-Strike understanding of how to use space. I thought they were brilliant. Mihan 29. What narratives in the NFL currently annoy you? I mean, the obvious one is that Tom Brady is the, undisputed GOAT. It's one thing if you think he's the GOAT, you can have that opinion. I would argue against it. The idea he's undisputed and you're not even allowed to discuss it and you're a moron and can't you see how many Super Bowls you're the moron. You are the one that's not interesting and maybe you shouldn't discuss it because you're not capable. You seem like you're intellectually a child. So not even the way the sport works. Probably the most complicated sport ever that needs the most men and coaching staff and home. There's a million factors. It's not just fucking how many rings you stacked, you moron. I think the idea that Aaron Rodgers is a playoff choker, the motherfucker was averaging, like 30 points a playoff game. Give me a break, homie. I mean, I thought the notion that Mahomes sucked in the Super Bowl against the Bucks, he made some incredible throws at his receivers were just dropping that shit. It was fucking pathetic, mate. Then I'll probably go with the obvious one, which is that you can keep a washed-up quarterback like fucking Let me think. Roethlisberger, fucking Breeze at the end. You can just keep these washed guys. It's like, well, since the rest of the team's amazing, they're good enough to game manage to a champions. No, they're not. They're not, though, are they? They're not. You'd have been better off getting like Matthew Stafford to those teams. You fucking idiot. Then you might have won the Super Bowl. I'll do one last one. What is your favourite Celtic myth? Or Celtic myth? It's actually Celtic. I don't have one. Why the fuck would I? I don't know if you know this, mate. My people aren't really Celtic. Like, even the era we're talking about with the Britons, it's like, it's a bit murky, that whole area, and the angle of what's going on. So, all right, I'll give you a joke answer, but it's also true. Slaying the Barbarian. There you go. That's my favourite Celtic myth, my dude. This video was kindly supported by Ahmed Hadjou, Matt Pugnatio, Rajcula, Kyle R, Pacy, Travis Goff, Adam Ochs, Animosity, Butt Pounder 420, Hades, Jensen Goh, Joseph Ginsburg, Kovacevicd, Tobias Bernasconi, Thooorin, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, and a special thanks always goes up to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to find out who upcoming guests are going to be? Maybe even suggest them on the topic for my content. Maybe you want to appear in one of those lengthy esports discussions with me, or ask me a question for my video AMA. Well, if these perks, or indeed any of the others available, intrigue you, then join the Skrill Illuminati today. Put the money where your mouth is. Where? In the description box below and the Patreon link.